I bailed a billionaire tech mogul out of a courtroom nightmare, only to discover his secret offshore vault, and that he'd burn my reputation to ashes if I spoke up. When I first met Victor Langley at the press junket in San Francisco, he seemed every bit the charming tycoon. Polished suits of cards grin, bespoke cufflinks catching the light, and a charisma that drew cameras like moths to flame. As the new public affairs director for Nexus Innovations, I'd been hired and thrust into crisis mode. Victor's startup was facing a sensational breach of contract lawsuit, threatening to topple both his reputation and the company's valuation. My job was simple in theory: tame the media, craft a narrative, and steer the story away from courtroom soundbites about stolen IP and breach of fiduciary duty. In practice, it meant late-night meetings, draft press releases rewritten at dawn, and hush-hush phone calls with reporters. When the verdict finally arrived, a narrow win via last-minute technicality, I expected relief. Instead, Victor beckoned me into his office, where his steely gaze held both gratitude and something darker. "Victor, thank you, Maya. You saved me millions. I'd like to repay the favor." He slid a sleek envelope across his mahogany desk. Inside lay bank documents showing a newly opened Nexus Global Trust in the Cook Islands, with an account number and a redemption code, indicative of an offshore holding worth at least $12 million. "Victor, consider it yours, a bonus for your loyalty." My pulse rattled. "Victor, this is tax evasion territory." "Victor, if the IRS asked, you never saw this, ever." He pressed the papers down and smiled. "Do good work, and the world and I will take care of you." I swallowed, mind racing. The prize glittered. Funds to pay off my student loans, to save my mother's house. But accepting it risked everything: my career, my ethics, even my freedom. I set the envelope aside. I spent the next 48 hours in a haze. By day, I crafted polished quotes for Victor. By night, I stared at those offshore documents. Finally, I made my decision. "Maya, Victor, thank you, but I can't accept this. I believe in transparency, what you taught me at Nexus, but this crosses a line." He studied me, expression unreadable. He nodded slowly. "I respect that. You've earned trust." I exhaled, relieved. Yet as I left his office, a quiet click of the door echoed like a verdict. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "Nice moral stand. Shame what could happen if someone in your past reappears." My chest tightened. I'd overcome a troubled childhood, foster homes, a father who vanished, a stain on my record for protesting corporate malfeasance in college. If someone dug, they'd find the incident where I was arrested, and the record sealed only by a court order. I texted Victor, "Maya, is this about the offshore account?" He replied almost instantly, "Victor, don't be ridiculous. Focus on Q2 projections. I'll handle the rest." But in his eyes, I saw the same steel that had slid those documents across the desk. I realized my choice had consequences. If I spoke of Nexus Global Trust, he could unleash ruin. I had no proof beyond memory and that envelope, which I'd returned. He'd erased the trail. Yet I couldn't ignore the moral abyss. I vowed to uncover the truth. Who controlled that offshore account? What did Victor plan to hide? And, most urgently, how to expose him without destroying myself? 2 weeks later, a late-night email landed in my inbox, an encrypted attachment titled Project Atlantis Nexus Innovations from a blocked address. No message. My fingers hesitated, then I downloaded it to a secure, isolated machine. Inside, a single PDF report on Project Atlantis, detailing clandestine R&D funding routed through shell corporations in the British Virgin Islands. Nexus's public filings showed no such projects. The codename matched rumors I'd heard: Victor's secret AI military contract business. My breath caught. If Project Atlantis existed, it meant my belief in Nexus's ethical innovation was a lie. Worse, war profiteering under the guise of civilian tech. I closed the laptop, mind-reeling. The stakes had skyrocketed. This was no longer about my conscience or student loans, but about dangerous technologies and offshore finances. And I was sitting on evidence that could topple a titan. Update 1. I spent the weekend cloistered in my apartment, the glow of my laptop illuminating stacks of legal pads and half-empty coffee mugs. The encrypted Project Atlantis PDF was my Rosetta Stone and my Pandora's box. By Monday morning, I'd cracked the PDF's password, Victor's daughter's birthday, of course, and dove into its contents. Scope: development of advanced neural interface implants with crowd control and surveillance applications. Funding channels: Nexus Global Trust, Cook Islands, seed capital of $12 million. Tricent Holdings, BVI, $8 million for prototype logistics. Ares Solutions, Cayman, $5 million earmarked regulatory consulting, a clear front. Timeline: Q1 2023, conceptual approval. Q3 2023, first human trials, unethical overseas. Q2 2024, deployment in undisclosed military contracts. I stared at the line, human trials, unethical, flesh-crawling tech tests performed on undocumented migrants in remote locations. Nexus's glossy AI for Good tagline masked a shadow war. I sketched a flowchart on a whiteboard in my living room, connecting shell entities back to Nexus headquarters. Public filings showed only Nexus Innovations and a minor subsidiary for tech support. The offshore branches were invisible to regulators. Whoever managed them held the purse strings and the power. A second encrypted email arrived Tuesday night, this time with a short audio file labeled meeting_092523.mp3. I hesitated, then opened it on my secure machine. The muffled voices were unmistakable, Victor and an unknown man with a heavy Eastern European accent. Victor, the prototypes performed as expected, next shipment to Sector 7, Libya. Voice: ensure no paper trail. And remember, Maya knows too much, watch her. My stomach turned, they watched me, already primed to silence any whistleblower. I pressed save, backing up the file to an external drive secured in my desk safe. I needed counsel, but Victor's tentacles reached into every major firm. So I dialed Elena Cruz, a veteran investigative journalist I'd met at a tech conference. Elena didn't know Nexus's inner workings, but she recognized a blockbuster. Elena: sounds explosive, but be careful. If Victor's world, he'll come for you. Me: I know. I need your help sifting through these records. Financial filings, leaked documents, anything. Elena: send what you have, encrypted. I'll cross-reference with my sources at the Financial Crimes Unit. Relief washed over me. I wasn't alone now. Elena's team had the legal reach and anonymity to pursue leads that would crush my career if I did it solo. Wednesday evening, as I left Nexus's San Mateo campus after a late-night press draft, I noticed a black SUV idling near the entrance. No company logo, tinted windows, engine off. My heart thudded. Two men in dark suits emerged, scanning badge IDs. I ducked into a side corridor and slipped out through an emergency exit. By the time I reached my car, the SUV was gone, but the message was clear. They were watching my every move. That night, Elena and I Skyped. She'd unearthed a whistleblower tip. An HR contractor at Nexus had vanished after questioning offshore expense lines. His last email hinted at a, quote, dead man switch hidden in Victor's private server. Elena: if we can retrieve that email and its attachments, we'll have proof of contract misconduct, human rights violations, and financial crimes. Me: but I can't access Victor's server, it's locked down. She leaned closer to the camera. Then we need a mole, someone inside IT or legal. I know a guy. For the first time, I saw a path forward. With Elena's network and my insider access, we could assemble the evidence needed to bring Victor's offshore empire crashing down, before he silenced me for good. Update 2. In the days after Elena's tip, I felt like I was walking a tightrope. One misstep, and Victor's men would snap it taut beneath me. But the promise of the dead man's switch drove me onward. Elena introduced me to Tariq, a soft-spoken network engineer who'd worked at Nexus until recently. He'd resigned under mysterious circumstances but remained in touch with the IT team. We met at a quiet cafe in Oakland. Tariq: Victor's server farm is locked down like Fort Knox. But there's a back door, an old admin account that Victor never scrubbed after migrating to the Cook Islands Trust. I can slip you credentials, but we'll need a distraction. He slid me a small USB drive labeled Nexus_auth_backdoor and whispered the username and password. Use it wisely. If they trace it, they'll know who helped. Me and you. I nodded, heart pounding. This was our foot in the door. To draw IT's attention away from my login, Elena devised a phishing simulation for the entire company, a mock security exercise that would generate alerts across the network. I drafted the faux phishing email sequence, complete with an urgent memo from CISO Lars Holm, a well-known executive. The simulation would run Thursday at noon, delaying Victor's security team for at least 30 minutes. Elena scheduled the simulation through her media contacts at the cybersecurity firm that handled Nexus training. Officially, they'd been contracted for a standard annual drill. Unofficially, it was the perfect cover. Thursday, at 12 o'clock sharp, my phone buzzed. Phishing test activated, from the cybersecurity firm. That was my cue. I slipped into the secure Nexus lobby under the guise of dropping off updated press kits, breezing past the distracted receptionist. Inside, I ducked into the unmarked server room adjacent to Victor's executive suite. Swiping my Nexus ID, I entered the code Tariq had given me. The door clicked open. Rows of humming racks glowed in the dim red lights. I found the terminal labeled VG Root 01, connected the USB, and entered the backdoor credentials. A shell prompt appeared. Root at VG-root-01, ~. My fingers trembled as I navigated to the home/Victor/Langley directory, Victor's personal data. Hidden within, I found a subfolder titled DMS, Dead Man's Switch. Inside DMS lay a single encrypted archive, switch.tar, GZ. I downloaded it to my encrypted laptop. Tariq's password cracked it open. Switch.docx, a Word file named Terms and Conditions. Video. MP4, a 1-minute clip of Victor speaking in half-lit secrecy. Transfer.log, a ledger of automated funds transfers to the Cook Islands Trust in 2023. I opened switch.docx. In the event of my incapacitation or public disclosure of Project Atlantis, this file and the attached video shall be automatically released to. The file was a perfect failsafe. If Victor ever tried to silence me, or if his offshore dealings were uncovered, the evidence would go public unimpeded. Next, I previewed video.mp4, Victor's voice raspy, eyes hard in low light, outlining the dark purposes of Project Atlantis, plans to test neural control implants on unwitting civilians. He named sectors, locations, and budgets. My blood ran cold. This was the smoking gun. Suddenly, a warning flashed on my laptop. Alert. Unauthorized login detected root at VG-root-01. My heart leapt. Nexus's intrusion detection systems were tracing me. I had only moments. I deleted my login traces and unmounted the USB. The drives clicked off as I scrambled cables. My Nexus ID ejected from the console. I sprinted from the server room as alarms began to ping in the hallway. At the lobby, security guards converged near the receptionist. I flashed my legitimate press credentials. "Guard, you're good. Annual drill. Move along." I nodded, exhaling silently. Outside, I hailed a rideshare and streamed back to Elena's safe house, the archive secured on an external drive hidden in my coat pocket. When I arrived, Elena was wired with excitement. "Elena, you got it? The DMS?" I handed her the drive, every piece, terms, video, logs. "Now we build our case." She plugged it into her secure workstation. "Elena, we'll hold the DMS in escrow with the International Consortium Against Torture, Immutable Timestamping and Global Distribution. Then we'll publish an exposé tying Victor to human rights abuses and financial crimes." I nodded, heart banging. This was the brink of war. Victor's empire versus our evidence. The next move. As dusk fell, Elena and I prepared our next steps. Secure the DMS, upload to Secure Timestamping Authority. Notify authorities, quietly tip off DOJ and SEC, providing them the DMS and transaction logs. Media blitz, coordinate with top-tier media to break the story immediately upon legal referral. Witness protection, arrange for my transfer under protective custody. Victor wouldn't hesitate to retaliate. By tonight, Victor's world would crack wide open. The countdown to his downfall, and my salvation had begun. Update 3. That evening, Elena and I set our plan into motion. The DMS evidence would trigger an unstoppable chain of accountability if we could outpace Victor's counterstrikes. At 8 p.m., we uploaded the switch.tar GZ archive to the Global Accountability Timestamp Service, GATS, an immutable blockchain-backed platform trusted by the UN and ICAT. Within minutes, our transaction was logged. GATS entry number 7421. Timestamp, the 15th of May 2025, T 20 hours 3 minutes and 12 seconds Z. SHA 256, D 4F 5E6 C7. The DMS file was now indelibly recorded. Any attempt to alter or suppress it would be immediately detectable worldwide. Next, we packaged our legal referral dossier, switch.docx and video.mp4. Transfer.log showing shell company flows, public filings contradicting Nexus's disclosures, cover letter outlining human rights violations and financial crimes. At 10 p.m., Elena made secure calls to DOJ Fraud Division, providing a protect reveal passphrase to unlock the files upon formal investigation. SEC Enforcement Office, citing potential violations of securities law for undisclosed offshore liabilities. United Nations Human Rights Council, submitting the video as prima facie evidence of non-consensual human trials. Each agency confirmed receipt and confidentiality, promising to act swiftly once the public release occurred. By midnight, we had pre-arranged embargoed articles with 3 major outlets. The New York Times, front-page exposé on criminal neural tech experiments. The Financial Times, deep dive into offshore trust structures and financial misconduct. Wired, technical analysis of Project Atlantis's illicit AI applications. All outlets agreed to publish at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Saving Time the next morning, aligned with DOJ's public announcement. Elena scheduled a secure group chat with editors, sharing encrypted keys to access the DMS files after the embargo lifted. At 6 a.m., my phone buzzed, an automated alert from Victor's corporate email address. Critical, pre-market drop in Nexus shares. Investigate. The stock had plunged 12% overnight on unusually high pre-market trading volumes. Simultaneously, anonymous messages circulated on Wall Street Bets and Twitter. $NX crash incoming, offshore scandal? I knew the storm had begun. Nexus's PR team scrambled to draft a defensive statement, but they were up against both official investigations and 24-hour news cycles. Aware that Victor might retaliate, I contacted the FBI Whistleblower Protection Unit. Agent Ruiz arranged safe relocation. Agent Ruiz, you'll be under protective custody at a secure facility. We'll provide new identification and relocation services. I packed a small bag. As dawn broke, a plain SUV arrived to transport me to safety. Elena hugged me goodbye, eyes fierce with determination. Elena, this isn't over. I'll handle the media storm. Now go stay safe. I slipped away, the dossier in Elena's hands, my future in protective custody, and Victor's empire teetering on the brink. As I drove to the safe house, I watched the sunrise and felt the weight of everything. The trust I shattered, the billionaire I exposed, and the justice I helped set in motion. By 8 o'clock, the world would know Victor Langley's true legacy, and Nexus would never recover the veneer of ethical innovation. Update 4. By 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Saving Time, every major news site and financial terminal blared the same headlines. Billionaire tech mogul indicted in human experimentation scandal. SEC charges Nexus Innovations with $25 million offshore fraud. UN condemns unauthorized neural trials on civilians. At 8:15, the Department of Justice announced an indictment against Victor Langley and 2 top Nexus executives, charging. Simultaneously, trading in $NX was halted on both NASDAQ and the Frankfurt Exchange. Market makers scrambled, and pre-market gains vanished into red. That morning, I monitored Victor's frantic maneuvers from the secure facility. His first act, a press conference video released on Nexus's official channels. His voice trembled slightly. Victor, these allegations are baseless. I've spent my life advocating ethical AI. Project Atlantis was a humanitarian effort, misunderstood. We will fight these charges. He framed himself as a visionary under politically motivated attack. Yet his carefully rehearsed words couldn't mask the gravity of the charges. Next, Victor's legal team filed an emergency injunction in federal court, seeking to unfreeze assets and delay SEC actions, claiming, quote, irreparable harm to innocent shareholders. Simultaneously, his PR hired top-tier crisis managers to pitch softer narratives, emphasizing job losses if Nexus collapsed and promising swift internal investigations. Across the tech sector, colleagues and competitors reacted with shock and opportunism. Rival firms like Omnicore Technologies and Veritas AI issued statements distancing themselves from unethical practices while quietly seeking to poach Nexus talent. Industry conferences canceled Nexus's keynote slots. Speaking engagements and sponsorships vanished. Investors filed class action lawsuits against Nexus's board for breach of fiduciary duty, seeking billions in damages. I watched news coverage with a pang of survivor's guilt. My evidence had ignited a firestorm, hurting countless employees and stakeholders innocent of wrongdoing. Elena's feature story ran at 9 o'clock, combining the DMS video and financial logs into a cohesive narrative. Under the guise of innovation, how Victor Langley shrouded atrocities behind offshore veils. Her article detailed human rights abuses, naming specific test sites, victims, and dates. It revealed the Cook Islands Trust's $12 million seed money, and it linked Nexus Innovations directly to illicit military contracts. Within hours, her piece was shared millions of times, prompting global outrage and calls for regulatory overhaul. Her byline graced the top of the Times front page, and her secure phone line crackled with calls from international agencies requesting interviews and data. While the world reeled, I remained in protective custody, but I was not immune to fallout. My personal phone and email blew up. Colleagues sent condolences, regret, and veiled accusations that I knew more than I let on. Friends urged me to seize the moment, suggesting book deals and speaking tours. Family fretted over my safety and begged me to return home. My face and name splashed across news sites. I realized my identity, João Miranda, would soon be untenable. Agent Ruiz informed me that relocation to a second safe house overseas was imminent. Back in San Francisco, Nexus's shaken board of directors convened an emergency session via secure video link. Share price collapse and lawsuits required rapid action. The agenda: vote of no confidence. Remove Victor Langley as CEO and board chair. Interim leadership: appoint COO Dr. Priya Menon as acting CEO and head of the Ethics Oversight Committee. Internal audit: launch an independent investigation into Project Atlantis and offshore entities with a forensic firm of the board's choosing. By noon Pacific time, the board announced. Effective immediately, Victor Langley is placed on administrative leave. Dr. Priya Menon assumes interim CEO duties. An independent forensic audit will determine corrective actions. Stocks briefly rebounded on hopes of reform, but legal proceedings continued to weigh heavily. As evening fell, Elena and I reviewed the day's victories and losses. We had toppled a titan, but justice was just beginning. In the coming hours, Victor's feud would spill into courtroom battles, asset recoveries, and potentially a corporate rebirth of Nexus Innovations. My next steps: finalize arrangements for overseas relocation, coordinate with DOJ for my witness testimony, and plan the public release of supplementary DMS material detailing the full scope of human experiments. This would cement the record against any future cover-ups. Update 5. 2 weeks after the SEC and DOJ actions, Victor Langley's world was defined by court dates and sealed indictments. Meanwhile, I prepared to testify as a key witness, a role that would force me into the spotlight I'd long avoided. Special Agent Ruiz arranged a secure deposition room in Washington, D.C. Accompanied by DOJ counsel, I reviewed my statement. Discovery of the offshore account documents offered by Victor. Receipt and handling of the Project Atlantis DMS, including the dead man's switch terms. Infiltration of the Nexus server, facilitated by insider Tariq. Transfer of evidence to DOJ and ICAT, time-stamped on GATS. I practiced under an assistant U.S. attorney's guidance, ensuring clarity and conciseness. Each detail I'd once hidden now formed the backbone of the government's case. In parallel, Victor's defense team mobilized. Alibi witnesses, longtime executives, vouched for Nexus's ethical oversight, claiming the DMS was unauthorized rogue data. Technical challenges. High-profile cybersecurity firms hired to argue the server breach was fabricated or misattributed. Character attacks, media leaks painting me as a disgruntled employee, seeking revenge, questioning my motives and credibility. I steeled myself, knowing these tactics were expected and that my documented chain of custody and GATS timestamp would withstand their onslaught. On the morning of my deposition, I arrived under DOJ escort. Sitting across from Victor's lead counsel, the room was tense. Prosecutor, Ms. Miranda, please describe how you first encountered Project Atlantis documentation. I recounted the encrypted email, the PDF contents, and my decision to bring the DMS forward. When asked about the server breach, I detailed Tariq's help and the phishing distraction. Victor's counsel tried to undermine me with rapid-fire objections. Defense: isn't it true you acted without authorization? How do we know you didn't fabricate the files? I held the DMS metadata and the GATS block entry before the court. Me: the blockchain timestamp confirms I uploaded the files at the stated time. Any tampering would break the hash. Even the judge nodded appreciatively. The deposition ended without drama. My testimony was solid. Following my deposition, DOJ moved to unseal the Project Atlantis case files. Court documents, once filed under seal, were now public. They included full terms and conditions from switch.docx, the complete video transcript of Victor's admissions, transfer logs tracing $25 million through offshore trusts, victim affidavits from coerced research subjects. News outlets exploded anew. Commentators decried the tech-industrial complex run amok. Regulators promised sweeping reforms, and congressional leaders cited the case as justification for stricter AI ethics laws. Under mounting pressure, the interim board moved decisively. Suspension of all neural interface projects pending ethical review. Full cooperation with DOJ and SEC, making formerly secret documents available. Leadership changes, with Dr. Menon nominated as permanent CEO on condition of her signing a Code of Transparency covenant. Whistleblower protections codified in Nexus's bylaws to safeguard future disclosures. These measures stabilized the company's standing. While share value remained volatile, investors saw a path forward. After the case files unsealed, my identity as the whistleblower, Maya Reynolds, now João Miranda, became public. I gave one on-camera interview under protective detail, describing the moral imperative behind my actions. I believed in innovation that uplifts humanity. When I saw Project Atlantis's darker side, I chose truth, even at great personal risk. The groundswell of public support was overwhelming: petition signatures, donations to whistleblower funds, and offers of speaking engagements at ethics conferences. But I declined most, focused instead on rebuilding my own life away from Nexus's shadow. Preparing for the final showdown. As Victor's criminal trial date approached, my final role was clear: to testify before the grand jury and, if needed, in open court. The evidence was incontrovertible, the public eye fierce. The last update will cover the climactic trial, Victor's sentencing, and the long-term reforms catalyzed by these revelations. Update 6. The trial of Victor Langley opened in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California. By now, the world had seen every shocking detail of Project Atlantis. My role, as whistleblower and key witness, was crucial in securing justice. On the first day, the courtroom buzzed with media, tech industry observers, and human rights advocates. Jurors, shielded behind tinted glass, answered voir dire questions carefully. Some admitted to using Nexus products. Most had neutral or negative views of big tech. Judge Patel: this trial concerns allegations of wire fraud, money laundering, and unlawful human experimentation. Jurors: can you remain impartial based solely on the evidence? As jurors nodded, I felt the gravity. These 12 people held Victor's fate in their hands. Assistant U.S. Attorney Keller addressed the court. AUSA Keller: ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will hear how Mr. Langley abused his power to fund secret neural control experiments on vulnerable populations, laundered millions through offshore trusts, and threatened those who sought to expose him. Our evidence comes from his own dead man's switch, his unvarnished admission of wrongdoing. The court replayed video.mp4, Victor's half-lit confession of Project Atlantis's scope. Jurors leaned forward, faces grim. Victor's defense counsel, Ms. Harrigan, rose. Ms. Harrigan, Mr. Langley is an innovator whose vision outpaced regulation. Any experiments were conducted under international contracts and with oversight. Allegations of wrongdoing arise only from a disgruntled employee, Ms. Reynolds, who fabricated evidence. She attempted to cast doubt, but AUSA Keller's prepared cross was ready. Day 3, I took the stand as Jonathan Maya Myers. Under oath, I recounted Victor's offshore offer and my refusal. Retrieval of Project Atlantis documents via encrypted emails. Infiltration of Nexus's server with Tariq's backdoor credentials. Timestamping the DMS on GATS. Transfer of evidence to DOJ and UN. Throughout, defense counsel objected, but the judge overruled each challenge. My calm demeanor and corroborating digital records fortified the prosecution's narrative. Following my testimony, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a forensic psychologist, testified about trauma inflicted on the undocumented subjects used in human trials based on victim affidavits. Her clinical expertise underscored the human rights violations, moving some jurors to tears. Next, Special Agent Ruiz detailed the NOAA-led raid on Nexus's offshore banking records, linking shell companies directly to Victor's personal directives. Victor's team called Dr. Samuel Trent, Nexus's lead AI scientist, to argue that Project Atlantis had theoretical civilian applications and that unethical was an overstatement. But under cross, Trent admitted oversight gaps and inability to account for trial subject consent, an implicit concession of wrongdoing. On Day 5, AUSA Keller delivered a compelling closing. AUSA Keller, the evidence, Victor's own words, the switch, the server logs, leaves no room for doubt. This jury must hold him accountable to protect the vulnerable and uphold the rule of law. Ms. Harrigan's final plea to the jury emphasized Langley's philanthropy and innovation, yet her words rang hollow against the avalanche of documented crimes. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Foreperson, we, the jury, find the defendant, Victor Langley, guilty on all counts. A hush fell over the courtroom. Victor's posture slumped as the gavel pounded. At the sentencing hearing 6 weeks later, Judge Patel imposed 20 years imprisonment for human experimentation and conspiracy, $500 million fine and asset forfeiture, including Nexus Global Trust Holdings, mandatory oversight of Nexus innovations under a court-appointed monitor. Victor maintained his dignity but offered no remarks. Outside, news cameras captured protesters and supporters alike, as his empire officially crumbled. With Victor's conviction, the DOJ granted me entry into the Witness Protection Rewards program, offering relocation assistance and financial support. I declined relocation, choosing instead to rebuild my life in Portland under my legal name, Maya Reynolds. Elena published a comprehensive book, Code of Silence, documenting the case and its implications for tech ethics. Proceeds funded a nonprofit dedicated to protecting whistleblowers. In the end, Maya Reynolds shows that standing against a billionaire's blackmail demands unwavering integrity, and that truth, once compelled into the light, can topple even the mightiest empire. Bay.